The warmth of the sun barely penetrated the tinted windows of our car as Ethan and I made our way to what I thought would be a memorable weekend. I, Sarah Jennings, a 33-year-old housewife, was nestled in the passenger seat, my heart fluttering with anticipation. It was our first wedding anniversary, and despite my reservations about spending it with Ethan's family, I couldn't help but feel excited about staying in a luxurious inn. Ethan, my husband, was an heir to a wealthy family, a fact that never ceased to color our relationship with its stark contrasts. Our marriage, though sprinkled with moments of tenderness, often felt overshadowed by the looming presence of his family's wealth. As we drove, Ethan seemed lost in thoughts, occasionally offering me a distracted smile. The car hummed along the highway, and I found myself lost in thoughts of our marriage. Ethan had always had a penchant for grand gestures, undoubtedly a habit ingrained from his lavish upbringing. I remembered how he used to regale me with stories of extravagant family vacations and opulent birthday celebrations. Yet today, our anniversary felt different. It was a celebration of our union, our journey together. The previous year had been a roller coaster of adjustments and learning. We had started our marital life in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. Ethan had desired a larger home, but I insisted on something modest, befitting our means. The idea of living ostentatiously solely on the merit of his family's wealth didn't sit right with me. Yet Ethan's salary seemed to increase conveniently whenever we faced financial concerns, a privilege I couldn't relate to but quietly appreciated. Our journey was abruptly interrupted when Ethan announced we were taking a brief stop. "I need to use the restroom," I said, stepping out into the cool air of the rest area. The mundane act of waiting for Ethan seemed to stretch into eternity. Then, my phone rang. It was Ethan. Confused, I answered, expecting him to ask if I wanted anything from the store. Instead, his voice, laced with a tone I couldn't quite place, sent shivers down my spine. "Sorry, Sarah, but we've already left. It's a family trip after all. Head back home, maybe do some cleaning." The words struck me like a physical blow. Around him, I could hear the muffled laughter of his family. I stood there, phone in hand, the world spinning around me, betrayed, abandoned at a rest stop. The reality of the situation sank in. I managed a feeble, "Okay," my voice trembling. A mix of humiliation, anger, and disbelief churned inside me. Today wasn't just our anniversary, it was also my birthday. The realization that they had brought me on this trip only to leave me behind was unbearable. I stumbled back into the restroom, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. As I locked myself in a stall, tears stung my eyes. I was alone, forsaken on a day that was supposed to be a celebration of our love. It was then, amidst the cold, sterile walls of the restroom, that a resolve began to take shape within me. Ethan, his family, their laughter at my expense, it was unforgivable. I would make them regret this, not just for the humiliation, but for every moment of disregard and disrespect they had shown me. This wasn't just a broken anniversary, it was the shattering of an illusion, the beginning of my retribution. In the solitude of the restroom stall, my thoughts raced through the past year of marriage. I recalled how Ethan's behavior often mirrored the indulgence and entitlement fostered by his wealthy upbringing. Despite his charming moments, there was an undercurrent of detachment from the realities of a life not cushioned by affluence. Our meeting was no fairy tale. It was a calculated match, orchestrated by a matchmaking agency, a common playground for the affluent looking for suitable partners. I was an anomaly there, not seeking wealth but companionship. Ethan, drawn to my simplicity, pursued me, and soon we were entwined in what I thought was a love match. Marriage, however, unfolded a different story. Ethan's ties to his family were stronger than I had anticipated. They wielded an influence over him that often left me feeling like an outsider. Our first instance of discord emerged when Ethan casually mentioned dining with his parents, excluding me, a practice that became increasingly frequent. Each invitation he received was an unspoken reminder of my exclusion from his family circle. Friends expressed surprise at Ethan's behavior, their reactions shedding light on the abnormality of our situation. "He's not let go of his mother's apron strings yet," one friend remarked, a statement that struck a nerve. It was true, Ethan, at 35, still prioritized his family's whims over our marital unity. My mother-in-law's unannounced visits further strained our relationship. Her remarks about my upbringing in a single-parent household cut deep, undermining my mother's sacrifices. Ethan's passive acceptance of his family's intrusions and snide comments felt like a betrayal. The promise of our anniversary trip had been a glimmer of hope, an opportunity for Ethan to demonstrate his commitment to our marriage. However, his decision to turn it into a family affair was the first sign of my misplaced expectations. Ethan's family, with their superficial pleasantries and veiled judgments, was a constant reminder of my peripheral place in his life. But the callous act of leaving me behind was a breaking point. It was a clear message. I was an outsider, a mere accessory in Ethan's life, easily discarded. Emerging from the restroom, a new sense of purpose steadied my shaking hands. No longer would I be the passive recipient of their disregard. It was time to reclaim my dignity, to show Ethan and his family that I was not a pawn in their game of pretenses. My resolve was further solidified when I called my uncle for help. His shock upon hearing my situation quickly turned to support. "I'll come to get you," he assured me. Gratitude mixed with a renewed determination filled me as I waited for his arrival. As I sat on the curb watching the cars pass by, I realized that this was more than just about revenge. It was about self-respect, about showing Ethan that he had underestimated me. It was about proving to myself that I was not defined by their perceptions or treatment of me. This was the beginning of my journey to reclaim my identity, my voice. Ethan and his family had ignited a fire within me, a fire that would lead me to paths unknown, but surely paths where I would no longer be a mere shadow in someone else's grandiose life. Under the fading afternoon sun, my uncle's car pulled up to the rest area. His expression, a blend of concern and indignation, was a balm to my frayed nerves. "Sarah, what happened?" he asked as I slid into the passenger seat. As we drove away, I recounted the day's events. My uncle listened in silence, his grip on the steering wheel tightening with each word. By the time I finished, the sympathetic frown on his face had deepened. "You know, Sarah," he began, his voice steady, "this might be an opportunity in disguise." His words piqued my curiosity. "How do you mean?" He glanced at me, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Do you remember the inn your mother runs in Palm Springs?" Of course I remembered. The inn, nestled in the heart of Palm Springs, was more than just a business. It was a legacy passed down through my mother's family for generations. As a child, I had spent countless summers there, lost in the maze of its lush gardens and elegant halls. It was a part of my heritage, one that Ethan and his family knew nothing about. A plan began to take shape in my mind, fueled by the revelations of my past and my uncle's subtle encouragement. The inn, with its grandeur and history, was the perfect stage for my confrontation with Ethan and his family. "Uncle, can you take me there?" I asked, my voice laced with newfound determination. His nod was all the confirmation I needed. As we drove towards Palm Springs, the familiar landscape brought back a flood of memories. The inn, a symbol of my family's resilience and strength, stood in stark contrast to the superficial world I had been entangled in with Ethan. Arriving at the inn, I was greeted by its timeless elegance. The staff, many of whom I knew since childhood, welcomed me with open arms. But it was the sight of my mother, the inn's dignified owner, that anchored me. "Mom," I said, embracing her, "I need your help." Over a cup of tea in her private quarters, I shared everything. My mother listened, her expression a mix of anger and sadness. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. "Sarah, you are so much more than what they've made you feel," she said firmly. "It's time they saw the real you, the strength and grace you carry." Together, we devised a plan. Ethan and his family, unaware of my connection to the inn, would be staying there that night. We would use this opportunity to unveil the truth, to show them that the woman they had so casually discarded was not just a forgotten housewife, but a part of something much greater. As the evening approached, I readied myself. Dressed in an elegant gown that belonged to my mother, I felt transformed, not just in appearance, but in spirit. This was more than just a confrontation. It was a reclaiming of my identity. My mother and I stood side by side, ready to face the guests of honor. The stage was set, and as the doors to the dining hall opened, I stepped into a new chapter of my life, one where I was no longer an invisible spectator, but the master of my own story. The dining hall of the inn was alive with the sounds of chatter and clinking silverware, as Ethan and his family settled in, unaware of the storm that was about to descend. I watched from the shadows, my heart pounding with a mix of nerves and resolve. My mother, ever the graceful hostess, entered the dining room with poise. The room quieted as she began to speak. "Welcome to our inn. I hope your stay is memorable." Her eyes briefly met mine, a silent signal of support. As the dinner progressed, I could hear snippets of conversation, each word from Ethan and his family fueling my determination. Their laughter, once a sound that made me feel excluded, now seemed shallow to my ears. Then, the moment arrived. Dessert was served, and my mother, carrying a cake lit with candles, entered the room. "Tonight, we celebrate a special occasion. It's the birthday and wedding anniversary of one of our guests, Miss Sarah Jennings. Where might she be seated?" My mother's voice was calm but carried an undercurrent of defiance. The room fell into a stunned silence. Ethan's family looked around, confusion etched on their faces. My mother-in-law, in a desperate bid to maintain appearances, raised her hand. "Oh, that's me. Thank you for the surprise." My mother's smile didn't waver, but there was a glint in her eye that signaled the turning point. "I apologize, but there seems to be a misunderstanding," she said. "Miss Jennings is not just any guest. She is my daughter and the future inheritor of this inn." The silence was deafening. Then, in a choreographed motion, I stepped out from my hiding place and stood beside my mother. The expressions of shock and disbelief on Ethan and his family's faces were a picture I would remember for a lifetime. "Ethan," I began, my voice steady, "you left me at a rest stop, thinking I was powerless and alone. But you see, I am not just the woman you thought you could easily discard. This inn, a symbol of my family's legacy, will be mine someday." The realization dawned on Ethan and his family. The woman they had underestimated was far from the helpless figure they imagined. I saw a range of emotions flicker across Ethan's face: confusion, realization, and finally fear. My mother-in-law stammered, trying to regain her composure. "This is preposterous! You're lying!" "No, Mother, she's not," Ethan interjected, his voice barely above a whisper. His gaze met mine, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I had once believed I married. The room was thick with tension, each person grappling with the revelation. I took a deep breath and delivered the final blow. "Ethan, I am leaving you. Our marriage, based on your family's superficial values and disrespect, is over. I deserve better, and I will find it, not as your shadow, but as a woman of strength and dignity." With those words, I turned and walked out of the dining hall, leaving behind a stunned silence. My mother followed, her arm around my shoulders in silent solidarity. That night, I not only confronted Ethan and his family, but also freed myself from the chains of their expectations. I had reclaimed my identity, not as Ethan's wife, but as Sarah Jennings, a woman with her own legacy and future. In the days following the dinner at the inn, the world seemed to take on a different hue. I had confronted my fears, spoken my truth, and in doing so, liberated myself from the confines of a loveless marriage. The decision to leave Ethan and his family behind was a declaration of my independence, a statement of my worth. As expected, the aftermath was a flurry of phone calls and messages from Ethan and his family. Each voicemail, each text, was a mix of apologies, pleas, and in some cases, veiled threats about the implications of my decision. But I was resolute. The Sarah who might have wavered, who might have succumbed to guilt or fear, no longer existed. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly swift. Perhaps it was the realization on their part that the fight was futile, or maybe it was the desire to avoid public embarrassment. Whatever their reasons, it mattered little to me. My focus was on the future, on the new path I had chosen for myself, and the new life growing within me. The knowledge of my pregnancy, once a source of apprehension, had now become a beacon of hope. It was a symbol of a new beginning, a tangible representation of a future filled with possibilities. My mother, ever supportive, was overjoyed at the prospect of becoming a grandmother. We began to plan, not just for the arrival of my child, but for our lives intertwined with the legacy of the inn. In those moments of planning, of envisioning a future where my child would grow up surrounded by the love and strength of our family, I found peace. The inn, with its rich history and timeless elegance, would be a sanctuary for us, a place where my child would learn about resilience, love, and the importance of carving one's own path in life. I also made a decision to return to my career aspirations. The inn offered endless opportunities, and I was keen to integrate my skills and passions into its legacy. Discussions with my mother about potential projects and renovations filled our days, each conversation a step towards a future where I was not just the inheritor of a legacy, but a creator of my own destiny. Ethan and his family became a distant memory, a chapter in my life that had ended, leaving behind lessons and a newfound strength. I no longer harbored resentment. Instead, I chose to focus on gratitude for the experiences that had led me to this point. As I stood in the gardens of the inn one evening, feeling the gentle breeze and watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, I felt a kick, a gentle yet powerful reminder of the life I was nurturing. In that moment, I whispered a promise to my unborn child, a vow of love, protection, and a life filled with joy and purpose. This was not just the end of a chapter marked by pain and betrayal. It was the beginning of a story of empowerment, of a woman who reclaimed her life and forged a new future, not just for herself, but for the new soul she was about to bring into the world.